Um, testing. Oh, you got to do another one. Can you hear me now? I guess I can try to stand back here. My button isn't on. Move. Huh? Does that work? Are we on now? Okay. Well, this is, one of the things I want to talk about. This is. I'm not on. Am I on?
Put money in it.
It's always, oh, there we go. All right. Okay. Now if I can get my screen up here. Okay. What a way to start this. Well, we'll see. Okay. Happens when people meet Jesus. So keep that in the back of your mind as we kind of walk through this. The scripture that we read where Jesus encounters the centurion, there's 3 points I kind of want to talk about as we kind of walk through this. But as we think about this, and we think about Luke, and what I think Luke is trying to do, at least in part, is to show us that this is not just Reformed Judaism. That what Jesus is doing, that He is bringing in something radically different. Okay? Jesus has already said earlier that you don't put new wine in old wineskins. And I think that this is kind of an illustration of what it looks like when Jesus is ushering in something new, completely new. He's not reforming. This is not part of just a new way to look at the Jewish faith. It's something radically new. And part of that is the centurion is a Gentile. And this is not much different than what we have in Acts chapter 10, where we have Cornelius. And if you look at the description of Cornelius, it's similar to this story that the centurion has a great reputation. He's built the synagogue. The Jews are in favor of him. They like him. And he's probably seen something happen in Capernaum earlier that Jesus has done. And this is kind of what's amazing to me, is he's obviously seen something that Jesus has done, because he's going to, when he has this need, he's going to call and try to get Jesus to help. Send his friends, or actually it's the Jewish friends that go and say, hey, you need to do this. But so we have the reputation of the centurion, much like we have in Acts chapter 10. We also have the centurion's sense of unworthiness. This would be humility. And when I was standing up here trying to get this thing to work, you realize how powerless you are. Okay? I mean, that's why I was kind of laughing when this was happening. I was going up all Sundays for this to happen. Is the one I'm going to talk about a little bit about, humility. Because this is the centurion. He says, look, I'm not even worthy to come into your house. or to call you to my house. Now, it would have been for the Jew, they couldn't enter a Gentile's house. And you hear that little story over in Acts chapter 10 as well, when Peter goes and, Peter's trying to learn this lesson that, hey, I don't know about this Gentile thing. And I think one of the things in Luke, as we read through Luke, he gives the emphasis on the Gentiles, the downtrodden, the women, that the other gospel writers don't do. But the centurion's sense of unworthiness, and as we think about reaching the community, and as we think about ourselves, and we think about humility, humility is a skill. It's something that we learn. We're not just born with humility. We learn to be humble. One of the things, as I was thinking about this, that happened to me personally, and as well as my coworker, when we were getting ready and preparing to plant the church in Florianópolis, Brazil. When we were at Harding, we thought we had the best team that you could possibly have. We felt like we were very well trained. Academically, we were prepared. We had studied culture. We had studied all this. And then we moved to all of it. We transferred over to ACU, did graduate studies, continuing to prepare for going to Florianópolis with what we originally started out with 5 people on the team, 5 families on the team. After we got to ACU, to Abilene, in our final year and a half, 2 years of prep, that 5 went down to 3. And we had all agreed that if it ever got down less than 3, we would not go. We would just stop. That would be God telling us, look, you think that you're really good, but you're really not, and so, you're not ready for this. But 3 dropped out for various reasons, but there were still the 3 of us. There was 3 families, and so we said, okay, we're prepared, we're ready, and we're going. When we got off the plane, we knew, just because of our training in cross-cultural and the stress and stuff, we knew we were about to lose a family. And sure enough, within 3 to 6 months, a family returned. Now, it was really kind of crazy because we had already said if it ever got less than 3, we're not going, because our plan, our whole strategy was built on 5 families. That in 10 years we would have a church of 300 with 5 families. We get there, we get off the plane, we know something's going on, and now we're down to 2. And I remember walking with my coworker in the park, and I'm just going, his name's Ken Graves, he's at Harding now. I said, Ken, what are we going to do? This is not following the plan. Our strategy was a 10-year strategy. And we were going to spend the first year just learning language because none of us spoke Portuguese. I mean, we could order off a menu and ask where the bathroom is, but that was about it. We lose a family, and so Ken and I just decide, well, we're here, and we don't have a return ticket. So there's no turning back, so let's just go ahead and we'll act like we have 5 families. And so we got our apartment, we got moved in. Now, we were not going to start a Bible study with anyone until we could speak the language. We were going to take private lessons for the first year. I think we were there, we had just gotten moved in to our apartment. I think we were probably about 3 months in, and we met a family from another city that wanted to study. Now, do you see a pattern here? None of this is working the way that we thought it should work. And I can remember the gentleman that wanted to do the Bible study. I remember we didn't speak Portuguese, okay? But I knew where the scriptures were, and I knew I could find them in the Portuguese Bible. So we were sitting in our apartment, and I would open up the passage, and I would say, "Here, just read that." And he would read it, and I knew what it said because I knew what the text said. And then we would try to muddle around and talk about it, and that's how we did our first Bible study. It was crazy. Very humbling. Because what I learned from that is that, look, God really doesn't care about our strategy. He doesn't really care about our preparation. He cares that we know that we need Him. And that He is orchestrating the whole thing. Whether we understand it or not. And I think that's kind of how the centurion, he'd seen Jesus, and when it comes to his faith, I really struggle with imagining how he could do that because of my struggle. I can't, I go, well, just say it and it'll be done. Jesus, you don't even have to come to the house. Just say it and it'll be done. That is crazy. But it's not so crazy when we have a need. See, I would like to tell you, after going through all of that, knowing that God's going to take care of it, I still don't have this kind of faith. I might intellectually say, well, Jesus is going to take care of it. But on the inside, I'm going, okay, what do I need to do? And we do need to do something, but often really don't know what to do or how this is going to work out. Anxiety goes up, creativity goes down, panic sets in, and we just start trying anything. But what I learned from that experience is just do what Jesus has called us to do, and that is share the kingdom of God with whoever He places in our pathway. Knowing that God is going to take care of it. And Jesus says, well, and I haven't seen this kind of faith in all Israel. Now, I think this is one of the things that's important for Luke, because Luke is wanting the Israelites to grow. He's wanting them to have a faith. He's wanting them to develop a faith like the centurion. And so he says, oh, this is what Jesus said. I haven't seen anybody with this kind of faith. Faith is also a skill. These are all things that we can learn. It doesn't matter how old we are. And one of the things I really like about neuroscience is in how the brain works and how we do things is because it really falls in line with the biblical text. And sometimes when I read an article on neuroscience and how the brain works and how we're discovering how humans are wired and why we do what we do. And then I read the biblical, I said, well, God, I go, wow, it was right there. It's just right there, right in front of us. But faith is a skill. So I want to talk just real briefly about how we can develop faith. This is what I have done. There are a lot of different ways. We could look at a lot of different biblical texts. But this is what I do. This is what I try to practice. And this is what I try to teach. The first thing that we need to do in order to develop faith, and remember, faith is something that we develop over time. We're not just zapped with it. And you would think that, well, gosh, after y'all planted the church in Brazil and you went through all that, your faith would just go, it waxes and wanes. But to keep it a steady growth pattern, I think it's essential that we recognize, number one, our God part. Okay? in Genesis 1:26, basically says something like this, Galon Jones paraphrase, that male and female He created them. He says, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. We're created in the image of God. So every one of us, if you're human and you're breathing, you have the image of God. Do you recognize it? Do you know what it does for you as a human? And see, I believe that one of the things that it does is it causes us to do certain things and causes us not to do certain others. Do we know what those things are? For example, the fact that we want to be in relationship, in my view, is the God part. Because God is relational. So, humans, we don't like to be alone. If you just really want to mess somebody up, put them in solitary confinement. That's the God part. Okay? Are we tracking? So we need to know our God part. Most of you, I would say, tell me if this is not true, that we do talk to ourselves, right? Do you talk to yourself? You know, you're driving somewhere and sometimes you can't tell if they're talking on a cell phone or who they're talking to, but they're talking to somebody. I mean, I do. I negotiate when I'm driving over here. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to do this. I was sitting here talking to myself, you know, while the song and stuff was going on about what I wanted to talk about. So we talk to ourselves. Well, who are we talking to? When we say we talk to ourselves, who are we actually talking to? And when we're negotiating with ourselves, well, should I do this or should I do that? Who are we negotiating with? See, I'm going to suggest to you that we negotiate with the God part. Because after we get past the tree episode, Genesis chapter 3, everything kind of goes haywire, right? So there's this part, there's other parts. Paul will talk about it in terms like the natural man and the spiritual man. So we're negotiating with those. Okay? And so the image of God, what's He going to be connected to? The natural man or the spiritual man? The spiritual man. Now, I know in my past, before becoming a Christian, and not knowing much about the God part, even though when I was doing stuff that I knew that I shouldn't do, where did that come from? All of my friends, we would sit around while we were getting high and go, gosh, we're going to kill ourselves. We need to stop doing this. What part is that? But then my natural part would kick back in and go, oh, but this is fun. It won't happen to you. You're an exception to the rule. Does that make sense? God part, spiritual part, image of God part. We negotiate with that part. Recognize that we have it. Because if you have it, you can build your faith on the fact that you know it's there. You just have to tap into it. And there's a tremendous amount of power there if we'll just tap into it. I will often, and what was told to me, said, Galon, you have everything that you need right inside you. Just tap into it. And what he was talking about is the image of God. Every one of you have everything that you possibly need right inside. Tap into it. And then watch what happens. Because what you'll see is that, wow, there is a God. And this God is so powerful that all He has to do is just to say it and it happens. Does that make sense? That's just crazy. But we have it. So we need to recognize it. And as you're reaching out to other people, as you're reaching the community, listen for the other person's God part. Because sometimes we don't recognize the God part. I might be talking to somebody about something, and I'm not recognizing the God part that's involved there. And I need somebody to go, sounds like your God part. But we can't even have that language if we don't recognize that it's there. Does that make sense? So we have to have a language that ignites that in each other. And even in those that are lost. Sometimes I'm thinking of a young lady that I don't have time for that story. Okay. But she was I got to tell it. My dad was in a rehab, and she worked at Fuzzy's Tacos. Okay, so I would go in there at lunch almost every day, and I would see her, and so we started talking. So she, we'd do the typical thing, hi, how are you doing, blah blah blah. So I asked her how she does. Oh, I'm not doing good today. Well, so what's going on? I just, asked. Well, I got to go pick up my kids. She was divorced. I got, there was a lot of her story that she shared. But there was the part of her that knew the right thing to do. The God part always knows the right thing to do. And so when she said that, when she told me, because she was negotiating with herself about what she was going to do with going and picking up her kids and the battle that she was having with her ex-husband and so forth. But she knew what to do. But it was very difficult for her to do it. So she's telling me that. So I just said, wow, sounds like God's really working on you. And she goes, God? Yeah, God. It's your God part. Now, what do you think when I said it's your God part, what do you think she did? She looked at me like I was absolutely insane. But I kept going back, and she kept wanting to know more. So when you identify someone's God, because she didn't even know she had a God part. But now she does. Now I have no idea where she is today. None. But I know that she knows that she has a God part. And I believe that because she's now, that God part has surfaced, it's been brought out of subconscious to consciousness, that God part will work. And she'll know what it is, and then her faith will grow. That's why I think it's essential that we understand that we have a God part. We recognize the God part. We can identify the God part. We can point it out in another person. We know how it works in our life, and that's the key. We have to know how it works. This is what I had said earlier. It's not about trying to get the speck out of somebody else's eye. It's just about helping them see that they're created in the image of God. And they are worthy because of that and nothing else. Does that make sense? Do God talk. God talk is in part like recognizing your God part and talking about it, making it part of your everyday language. And it might sound like something like,